Hello ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to break down the series of yesterday. We have a little off day. We're going to be doing predictions at the end of this. I will do the series in wrong order because I prepared the videos in wrong order. So we're just going to start off with Golden Guardians against C9. So I made a prediction that Golden Guardians is going to win because I thought that they showed more in terms of macro, and I thought that this is going to be more important. But my main concern was that C9 are just individually better, and even though Golden Guardians have good ideas, their execution is sometimes very poor. And I was thinking, you know, if there's a way for C9 to win, they're going to create scenarios where Berserker pretty much is the CEO. And I think the adaptation we saw from C9 after the loss against Bilibili, I think that Fudge's role was a lot more clear and defined. Barring the final game that they played, where they definitely took the opportunity to play a very carnivorous draft against the opposition. So we look at game one. Let me see if everything is in right order. It is in right order. So Golden Guardians versus C9, game number one. So Golden Guardians open up with LB ban. The last time they struggled against the LB and Eminence, this is an Eminence classic. Always when you have teams facing off against each other regionally, then a lot of new things begin to appear. Nidalee is out against Blabber. Blabber is a fantastic jungler, and you know, he's definitely like a player that can pull off a Nidalee, even though Nidalee is definitely hard to pull off. But more on Nidalee later because it does get picked in game 4. LeBlanc Nidalee Sion. Sion was something that was target banned against Fudge. It's something, I believe, if we just double check, I believe it's his most played this season. If we take a look at Fudge, oh, almost. So it's his second most played. So he's a, you know, it's very easy to remember Fudge as the homie that enjoys his Fiora and the Jax, but in the end, you know, he's been playing tanks for a big part of the season. I was very surprised when I opened this the first time, but this is basically the identity that you want your top laner to pivot towards when it comes to, of course, you know, playing at the current meta, and especially when you have such a good and strong performing, you know, AD carry like Berserker. So C9 definitely mechanically performed, but let's just look at how the draft went. Maokai followed by K'Sante Aphelios, and then Jinx and Jace. So they're picking Jace for the double flex, and then Nidalee is out to pick with K'Sante. So to just go for Lulu on 3 and setting it up by banning the supports, that could potentially, you know, be the all-in supports that are good against C9's bot lane. Nautilus this time around, in a lot of series, we see it being banned 1, 2, 3 because, you know, against G2, for example, they ban it 1, 2, 3, so it's not something that slips through. But here Nautilus gets picked. You know, they banned 2 hookers, and there was the 3rd hooker still in the picture. Here I was surprised that we got the Sylas on 5. I think Sylas, you know, has synergy against Sejuani. I feel like I have a sneeze coming. It wasn't a sneeze. Oh, I felt like a sneeze was coming, but it didn't appear. Forgive me. They picked Sylas because the enemy is showing Maokai and Nautilus some strong ults at a synergy with Seju. Even though it might have a hard time into Jace in isolation, Seju and Sylas will eventually have like some gang timers against Jace, because most likely he's not going to run cleanse. Fiora was also a bit of a crazy one here. I don't know if there was a deeper way of punishing here for red side. Like, let's say they picked Gragas on 4, right? Let's say they picked Gragas on 4, and then they picked Jace on 5. I think this could have been an angle. But then again, the enemy has Jace, so my plan falls through. It would have to be like a Tristana angle or something. But nevertheless, Eminence, Sylas, he likes it. I was worried about it because Sylas against the likes of Jace, Fiora, Jinx isn't super comfortable, but Sylas is a comfort pick for the opposition. I wonder here if there is some opportunity here to look for Gragas on 4, double flexes, and then maybe go Tristana on 5. Maybe this is an angle and have a composition that plays out like that. But in the end, right, I think when the enemy is showing the Jinx, Jace, Maokai hand to you, finding more tools to force on the opposition can be very helpful, especially when the opponent is giving you those ults. right? We already know that the play pattern of this game is that they need to be able to force on Jace and Jinx, and I think that's why C9 went for this Sejuani Sylas adaptation. This is going to give your relatively short range composition, in contrast of the enemy 1, 2, 3, ways to actually like fight back, because you will be forced to fight back. And that's why this Fiora on 5, you know, can be decent in some cases, can lane against K'Sante in isolation if you believe that the K'Sante is going top no matter what. It's just, we just saw Bin trying to play the Fiora and not being super effective, so I was kind of surprised by this too, and I was taken aback by the Sylas. But now when I'm looking at it, you know, I think that if you want to make your comp strong against enemy 1, 2, 3, you need to find ways and tools to engage and to break them. All right? Going into the game, I think there was a couple of crucial moments. I think this is an example of Golden Guardian's good ideas, but not so great execution. So right before this, we have Berserker using Cleanse, no flash on Sven, no heal on Sven as well, and he finds a level 3 swing here, where he looks to all in. And something as simple as not placing the traps is such a detriment here. Like in terms of how the traps were placed, I think just because they didn't place the traps appropriately, they can't all in here, and as the enemy tries to exit, this turns into a very big problem. I think in a different world here, if the traps are placed appropriately, you know, basic attack into auto, you know, he could auto, and they could just hit Berserker to the death, I think that he could just die here. Because this, is going to do a lot of damage here. He just needs to walk out of auto range, hit, and then they place the traps appropriately. I think he just dies. But instead, they lose a lot of HP, they lose a lot of their threatening power and pushing power from Huhi, and as they try to exit here, they drop it to 1 HP. And Sylas already somehow managed to create a circumstance where he is the one crashing a wave into mid. I don't know what happened in mid, really not sure. I don't know what Gori did in terms of managing it, but the fact that Sylas gets a double kill here on the exit, you know, something as, you know, as Golden Guardians could have walked away from this situation with a kill and a push out into go base and could have swung the game altogether, it turns into Golden Guardians limping out of the situation and giving a double kill to Sylas. And I think this is kind of telling of the Golden Guardian story. Good ideas, very poor execution. While C9 have some decent ideas, but way better execution than Golden Guardians. Looking at the next occurrence in the game that was very important. This we already talked about. I don't know why my replay didn't save.
Battle cruiser operational.
Chiliosic, thank you very much. I was trying to save a very specific point in the replay. I think just generally speaking, there was a lot of moments after the Sylas got ahead that they were finding a lot of engage angles onto Jace. The Sejuani also flying. If Jace has no flash, it's very easy to catch him. Of course, with the Sylas, especially when he's itemizing Everfrost, and the Sejuani ult is very tough for Jace to dodge. I think that the progression of the game was quite one-sided. I think I just move on to this point because I don't know what I was trying to save here.
I think Golden Guardians could...
This was the game breaker, in my opinion. The enemy is pushing for Drake, and Jace is showing on bottom side. And I'm not so sure why Golden Guardians are posturing so aggressively on the wave. They have very limited vision on bottom side, and Jace is showing on bot, Fiora showing on top. I think that in such a structure, you just want to create a circumstance where you plain and simple stand defensively on bot and make sure that Jace doesn't die, and then Fiora pushes out, presses B, and then they look to match. But this was ridiculous. C9, of course, look for the punish, the Everfrost, and this fight is just winning for C9, of course. He gets stunned, and then GG. No idea what Golden Guardians was thinking here, and C9 instantly recognized, yo, Jace's bot, what the fuck are they doing? Can we fuck them up? They are looking at our wave, they're looking at us turret. Not okay. Finally, I really like this play here from C9, although, you know, although it might seem crazy, so why are they flipping at Nash? They're not necessarily flipping at Nash. It only turns into a flip if the enemy is in position to smite and, you know, they can enter the Baron pit with ease. And even in those cases, you can easily create circumstances where you burst the Nash together because you have 5 people surrounding the Nash, right? So claiming it's 50-50 is kind of dishonest, right? So they're starting Nash here. Why are they starting Nash? It's because Stixie currently has no sums. Who has no sums? Right now, Jinx on her items is very weak. She can't carry the fight, very weak. Transition process here for Jace. Look at the itemization difference, right? You have Sejuani and Maokai are on similar footing. You have Keisante and Fiora on similar footing, but Keisante as a champion, of course, is going to be able to contribute a lot more in 5v5s. And this is a moment where Fiora is on bot and she's pushing a neutral wave. So they're just forcing to try to make Fiora TP and create a circumstance where Fiora will not have time to scale, where Jinx will not have time to get her summoners back. No flash Jace, no flash Maokai, no flash Jinx. So in this state of the game, C9 know that they are way stronger. So they are basically pulling the trigger here by forcing the enemy to act in a moment where they don't want to act. This is very good fundamental play from C9. They're aware of the situation. They are much stronger. We watch it play out. They're just hitting. There's not 50-50. It's like the enemy, like here, they just want to create a situation where they fight. They're going to engage on this first target. Eminem is stealing Maokai ult, and Golden Guardians, they feel very uncomfortable here because they don't necessarily want to enter. They don't want to enter. They don't want to be the ones fighting. And C9 are just going to take the first best fight they get and turn and then win because they are much stronger. This is how you leverage strength and power, right? C9 is much stronger. Even though the gold differential might not be that big, you need to look at the details. And it's very hard to put a monetary value of flash. A flash could deny a whole play. A flash could deny a whole situation. Especially when you have flash and the opposition doesn't have flash. And especially when you have such a big item swing, you need to leverage your pressure. And if this was a situation where C9 was on blue side, they need to just push mid all the way, take space in their jungle, and then just find ways to turn by either, you know, covering the usual pockets of engagement when the enemy tries to cross into Nash, right? And those were the lessons of this game. Let me see if I just had an additional one here. I think we mentioned it all. All right, that leads us to game number 2. Did I just skip game number 2 completely? I might have. Game number 2. Game number 2. I think that this game was largely decided by Golden Guardians' inability to just pay attention to the Annie flanks. Annie here in this game got insane amount of value because Golden Guardians couldn't execute well on their positions. Golden Guardians was very ahead in this game, and Licorice had a fantastic Rumble game where he got very far ahead of the Gragas on top, got a good 1-for-1 kill. Viego was very far out of the curve, and they managed to create a circumstance where they won sole point. C9 were also struggling in the lane phase against the Xayah Rakan. They were locking it in because Nautilus was showing, and Huhi showed that he still can play Lulu. And this time around, Golden Guardians executed on the lane phase a lot better. Xayah Rakan don't have a lot of breathing room against Lulu and Aphelios. It's very easy for them to, you know, Xayah Rakan can maybe break the lane, was kind of flash all in, trade sums, and get carried by jungle. But an issue here for C9 is the fact that Kha'Zix is their jungler, and he is a lot weaker than Viego when it comes to the early game play. So this type of draft I like from Golden Guardians. They leverage the Nautilus flex, and they just send Nautilus into Annie, and then Lulu picked on 3 to, of course, get picked into Rakan. Later, if Rakan tries to combo, as long as Aphelios has cleanse, he can take it easy. But this game actually didn't play cleanse. I thought this was an easy cleanse game because at least if Rakan tries to R flash W, you can cleanse and Gale Force out or react. Of course, you can also say as Aphelios, you can rely on the Lulu to cancel the Rakan. That could be fine. But all in all, I like this draft here from Golden Guardians. Not so easy for Golden Guardians to be buying magic resistance besides maybe Gragas. Jizuke had the cool idea of Gragas maybe going for Abyssal Mask in such a game if he wants to buy MR and match Rumble on side, because Rumble can only, in most cases, ideally he wants to itemize Proto Belt or Night Harvester into Shadow Flame, as an example. With Pure Pen being solo AP, sure he has Nautilus, but Zaya buying MR or Kha'Zix buying MR in such a game would be quite bad into the enemy comp. Now looking at this game, let me just pull it up. We have GG versus Game 2. I just want to highlight MNS' beautiful flanks.
A little bit of gold into their back pocket along with
So far, 4.5 minutes.
Because looking at the game state, it's looking quite good.
But we've got Stixxay now potentially.
Before this, I wanted to highlight the map opening. Here, I like the read from Sven, where he doesn't see enemy Aphelios on the wave. He doesn't see Aphelios on the wave, and Rumble is pushing side. He is making the assumption that the opposition is in base. And now he's looking to drop wards, he gets deep wards, and they're using a little bit of a tempo advantage here to get good appropriate vision. And even in a state of the game where you could consider them weaker, they're finding opportunities by being in the right space. Will it display? Just mute the casters. I love you casters, but this is, you know, we're focusing on something else. Gori tried to Q into R on Berserker there, but Berserker just walked away from the Rumble ult. He has Stixxay. I don't know what kind of pathing Stixxay took. Like, Stixxay is going for golems, and they spot him on this vision that Sven put, right? Sven had this tempo swing, and it was beautiful. And then they just isolate Stixxay here as he's trying to cross, and they smack him on the forehead. And I think this was based off the foresight that C9 recognized that the enemy has poor tempo, and they find a punish even in a state of the game where they are, you know, you could consider them weaker. At the same time, you know, they're not that much weaker. It's like I'm comparing items. The big difference is just 3 Drakes, right? They have farmed pretty well. 2 core Gragas, 2 core Kha'Zix, 2 core Ani. But just here, I wanted to highlight how, based off of how Aphelios was moving, they could assume that the enemy was in base and place very deep vision and then look for potential punishes that then burns Stixxay's flash. It was very nice. I like that. Now, I don't understand. You know, Stixxay chooses to base. Golden Guardians choose to contest. Very strange. Very strange. They know they chunk Stixxay to 1 HP. You know, maybe Stixxay could stay, maybe he couldn't, but Gori is posturing. Very strange. I don't know what was thought here. And then they leverage that into a Nash start. MNS with a gorgeous flank. Really beautiful. Let's take a step back and just watch the path that MNS takes here. Okay? Very beautiful. He avoids all vision, walks on the ward that he has placed, a blue trinket is used. MNS spots them with the help of the sweeper, and now he's going to jiggle around the corner. He flashes, and now they spot him. Right? In hindsight now, there's a ward here, and they are not really reacting appropriately. It doesn't seem like they see him at all. I thought this was... I like the flank idea from MNS, and I remember it being really good, but now when I'm watching it, I do see the ward here. And he's just largely ignored, and the turnaround happens, and a circumstance where C9 turned a tempo swing into something so positive, where Stixxay had to base, they find the kill on Nautilus, and they turn that into a Nash. Next thing that occurs is something very similar. I think here Fudge doesn't necessarily... It's like in this map setup, I think Fudge just needs to position a little bit more defensive. He's just he's just posturing to put the Nash buff on the wave, right? But it's just a little bit too greedy. I understand what he wants to do, but just a little bit too greedy. Because C9 are aware the Golden Guardians are 5 on mid. Like here, this wave dies, right? This wave dies here, and they spot 4, and 6 is not going to be on side with Aphelios. So, as C9 are aware of the fact that the enemy is 5 on mid, they are then pushing side. We continue. I just wanted to highlight MNS flank again. That Golden Guardians didn't play around at all. Yeah, MNS is entering into this space and they're looking to collapse on this group. And very strange here how MNS is allowed to walk in, that no one is pressuring him. He has no flash, keep in mind. No one's pressuring him, no one's defending Stixxay, he has no space to go. But in reality, you know, they should just turn on MNS, but it doesn't happen. And now Stixxay is trying to Tokyo drift past MNS here. Like this is insanity, right? And GG just lose on the execution. We move on to game number 3. Game number 3. In terms of draft, Golden Guardians went for some comfort picks. I thought on paper, C9's draft looks stronger, especially with Lissandra out, picking Vi and K'Sante being out. I think Vi is going to have insane value, especially against the 1-2-3 that is showing. I think Vi looks very strong here. The enemy went Zeri into Vi, and then Annie as well, and then Kazi's on 3. I think that blue side draft out of 1-2-3 is very far ahead. I think that Jinx into Zeri is also very good to play, especially if the enemy is not so keen to play Lulu after losing a Lulu game, right? I think that Golden Guardians as their identity, they definitely like to play the more engaged supports on Huhi. They ban Nautilus Lulu, you know, they ban Lulu with Zeri on their side, and then Talia on 4 into Ahri. I think playing Talia into Vi Ahri sounds insanely hard, but I have to admit Gori played a pretty decent game in this one, and then Gragas blind top because Sion is out with Olaf banned, and then Tam Kench to defend the Jinx from any potential all-in that the enemy might throw on you. Right? But then again, we have a little Poppy, and Poppy, you know, Poppy has some value against Vi and Ahri, and it isn't that terrible, but I feel like, you know, I feel like Poppy is a champion that if you're really good at it, a lot of the abilities can find value. Like let's say you're playing a game of Poppy and your W doesn't exist. Like let's say you don't have a W, which is definitely like it's a move. It's just a spell that gives you move speed. Let's say you don't have an enemy team doesn't have any dashes. Poppy ult and Poppy E can be enough to find great value on Poppy. I think Licorice had a fantastic Poppy game. And I think this was a good highlight of what Poppy can do when she's played well.
And they burned it down. Yeah, they gave up one draft.
Here was surprising that C9 chose to push her on the wave the way they did. They exit through bottom side, and I think the River did a good job of just chunking MNS and slowing him down and allowing Golden Guardians to pursuit. I don't understand here why C9 chose to turn on Kha'Zix, because in the end they really need to exit. The issue that occurs here, right, is whoever is going to fight in this area and who crosses this choke point is going to be at a significant disadvantage. So if C9 cross this point and GG chase into there, I could see a world where C9 have a very winning fight, but they decide to turn when they are the ones in the choke. Okay? So you can see here C9, if they decided to kite backwards more and they invited Golden Guardians to cross this point, things could have been very beautiful. But they choose to turn way too early, and now they're being put in this spot where 3 people are going to get completely annihilated. Licorice managed to survive and he pieces out, and these 2 cannot be helped. Look at that. Look at the Divine Thunder, Captain America shield. It's kind of funny, isn't it? We continue. This game, off the back of a very nice ultimate later on. I guess this is a moment that we can highlight too, because, you know, Stixxay had a moment where he could potentially get a penta, but Berserker gets, you know, just has that spacing. Stixxay, I think that, you know, he fucked up some autos here, and he definitely could have played this a little bit better. You know, he could have slid forward, you know, with the high move speed and look for the final auto. Berserker spaced him and kind of shat on him, right, to keep the game alive. And then finally, I just wanted to show the Papushka here, the Nash start. I believe this is the one where Poppy just sends the Vi over the wall. Oh, I think it happened earlier in the game. The final fight, I guess this is the one. I basically just wanted to show this game to highlight how fucking well Licorice played, because he smurfed out of his mind. He just completely smurfed. Let me find that final fight where he just breaks the ankles of, I believe, the Ahri. This is the one. Licorice just out of bot lane, you know, undermines the enemy position. Comes in here and he just slams Berserker against the wall. Licorice. See. Very nice. He walked all the way from bot. Wasn't spotted on vision. And he finds Berserker. And that's the game winner. Also something I wanted to highlight. This is one of the rare cases where Chemtech Soul actually has like value. You know? Can Berserker react to it? Insanely hard. Insanely hard. I think most AD carries are going to die there. Of course, you can say, yo, Licorice showed on the bot wave, they need to know. Like if we can check, like here he's on the bot wave, right? And then he just walks all the way around. It's just not super easy to know, because Berserker feels safe because Ahri is crossing here and he dodges the vision, right? And let's continue now to the game 4, because I think probably this was the most interesting one. C9, you know, there was a lot of talk about this draft, but I think this draft is fucking monster for C9, by the way. Like, this is the best Nidalee draft I've seen all tournament long. Fantastic Nidalee draft. Why? Well, Nidalee against Maokai, inherently Maokai is a very weak jungler early, but people play it more in the current state of jungle because you can get away with clearing camps and you will be basically even in a lot of games as Maokai, right? Here the K'Sante first pick. The issue is, if K'Sante is in the picture, giving K'Sante to red makes it insanely hard to draft. Very difficult. And if K'Sante is open, you kind of need to be ready to do this K'Sante Nidalee X draft, right? Some teams do K'Sante Nidalee Jinx as an example, or K'Sante Nidalee Jace as an alteration. Like here, I think that C9 got a lot of freedom because Zeri was shown. The reason they get a lot of freedom here is because Lulu is banned and the enemy picks Zeri, which means that they can actually drop their bot lane, because they have a lot of bot lanes to pick against Zeri. I thought here with Zeri Rakan showing, I thought they were going to play Lucian Nami, right? I think that Lucian Nami accomplishes very similar things to Varus Heimerdinger, but Varus is very good at this too, right? Basically, the idea of this whole composition is to make sure that Nidalee has success, so she can pressure the enemy jungler, and as she pressures the enemy jungle, she creates a circumstance where her laners also can pressure freely because the Maokai cannot interact. And in a world where the Avengers can't TP down on you on your forehead as you're harassing the enemy turret at minute 4, a la Bwipo style, you definitely can get away with harassing the enemy in the turret as long as the enemy jungle is pressured. So here in this scenario, Golden Guardians are thinking to themselves, if enemy has K'Sante and we give them Maokai, then they have K'Sante flex with an AP jungle, we don't want to interact with that. So they pick Maokai away. And in this case, playing the Nidalee draft after you have K'Sante first pick, there's no other option. The reason I say this is because people say, Nidalee, it's just that I think K'Sante is really, really strong on the patch. And I think if you give K'Sante over to red side, you're going to be in big trouble. Sure, you could say, yo, let's do a draft where we ban K'Sante on 3 and pick Vi over Annie. That could be a draft. And maybe you are playing outside of the realm of Nidalee and then you play the game. But I think being able to play a draft like this is a good sign. I think this was a very, very strong draft. Especially, I think if the enemy rotates Zeri Maokai, the biggest possible punish that you can do is to slam Nidalee Jace. Because once again, you have many answers into Zeri. You can play Jinx lanes, Aphelios lanes, you can play this lane, Varus Heimerdinger, you can play Lucian Nami. Zeri, especially without Lulu, just isn't that strong. So the punishment is swift. If the enemy team picked Aphelios or Jinx here, maybe they could have accomplished the same thing, right? Because once again, you have Lucian, Nami, Varus, and then Jinx / Aphelios, as an example. So maybe they would have done the same thing. But maybe they would have also picked AD instead of Jace. But nevertheless, the reason I think this is a great Nidalee draft is because the enemy has Zeri Rakan, insanely weak bot lane. They have Poppy top, insanely weak top laner as well. Like, not, honestly, I was too harsh there. Poppy is not that weak. Poppy can find angles against Jace. Poppy is not that weak. But Jace is going to push. And if he is not threatened by Maokai, he's going to have a good game, for sure. And then finally, Yasuo into K'Sante. It's a horrible matchup. I've never seen it play out before I saw this game. But Yasuo K'Sante is rough. So the idea here, right, is Lulu is already banned. Like, you ban Lulu yourself and Zeri 1-2 is extreme weakness. And then here they pick ban Jinx, Aphelios, and pick Rakan. They pick Rakan, of course, to deny the enemy Xayah Rakan. But they didn't think at all about Varus Heimerdinger, and I think Lucian Nami here would have been fantastic too. But Varus Heimerdinger is a little bit more indexed on the early, and Lucian Nami is more scaling, so it's a choice, right? I like Lucian Nami as well because they do actual magic damage, but this is just a preference choice. So in this game, it went exactly as you'd imagine, right, in the early game. And the key discussion here is, why did C9 not manage to snowball this game further? Because they had a tremendous lead. They were completely, destroying the opposition. They got the position that they wanted in the game. You just skim through this, right? It's like we skim through this. It's like currently this is a 9,000 gold lead at the minute 13. I think this is probably the biggest lead we had all MSI long. This is amazing. This is fantastic. The key situation you want to set up for yourself if you want to accelerate this game is the simple rule that I like to follow when Poke Varus is being played is, the idea is that you pick Poke Varus or Snowball bot. You continue that snowballing by always creating circumstances where you group around the Varus and he can posture to throw Varus ult. The idea is you have to rally around your Varus ult and create circumstances where he can throw it and find insane value. So basically you want to create siege scenarios where the enemy is forced to group, and you want to create scenarios where you basically just throw Varus ult, right? And in my mind, when I look at this game, the biggest issue is K'Sante needs to push 1 into hard push 2 into make the wave cross the river point, group into mid, and then collapse into one side. They want to create circumstances where they group on one side, because the red side composition, even though they're behind, it's very polarizing what they want to achieve in the composition. And K'Sante is such a crucial part of this draft because he cannot get engaged on, and he can block any of the abilities that the enemy wants to throw, which is essential. Maokai is gonna ult, Poppy is going to flank, and then Rakan's gonna go. A lot of these champions, no matter how far ahead they are, can be, in danger of these abilities. So I wanted to highlight this specific point in the game, where this is an example where this could have been enacted, right? So for example, here in this spot, if you want to play for tier 2 bot, as an example, is K'Sante pushes out this wave, he hovers into mid, and then the C9 composition plays into bot side. Jace could have started pushing bot already, and then they collapse on tier 2 bot, the enemy needs to reply, and then you go. Obviously in this, it's very important that they need to create a circumstance. I can't. Bless you. Bless you. So, in this context, right? If we go a little bit back. So far you got engaged on the mid. The circumstance that you always want to create when you have a Varus that is this far ahead of the curve is if you can make the enemy group under one turret like, K'Sante needs to be done farming. I think K'Sante just needs to group with his team. They need to collapse onto one side, and then that's it. Just play on 2 lanes. Play on 2 lanes and create a slow push on 1 wave, break through mid, and then cross into that side and just siege. It's very important. I think already if you just stand in front of the turret and throw Varus Qs and you throw Varus ults, you're going to find immense value. But I think that the C9 solo laners were too inclined to farm. Way too inclined to farm. For example, here again, right? You secured your Nash. Jace is now pushing bot. And in reality, I think that you can be comfortable enough to, after you secured Nash and Poppy is defending and Rakan is showing on mid, to collapse into bot. Of course, you need to pay attention to the enemy movement. If the enemy is not defending fully bot, you cross into mid again. And then you move depending on the enemy movement. If the enemy tries to defend the tier 2 bot by pressuring Nash, you just return into topside. If they're defending all the way, you go all the way. Because I think the biggest struggle that they had is that they were playing heavily around Nashor. But whenever they had push timers, they were either basing or using that push timer to push the other side of the map. But I think that when you're stronger, you just need to commit into one side and then force the enemy to defend. And I think this is the lesson here for C9. But I really, really like their comp. I really like their early game. I think this composition is really fucking strong. I don't think Berserker was asleep the first 2 games. Like, I think game 1 he played pretty decent. Game 2 he just had a very hard lane phase. But yeah, I think that's enough on this series. We continue to the team fighting masterpiece. That is JDG versus Bilibili. Looking at the draft, JDG, Lucian, Rakan, Cannon. I think removing Lucian against Elk is a very good idea. I think it's a very, very good idea. He was insanely good and effective on it. Xayah Rakan out is also smart, and then Cannon. They look to first pick a mid laner, especially after Bilibili banned Annie and Nautilus. They first pick Ahri. Lulu Jinx gets locked in. The only answer is Aphelios Thresh. If you drop support, it's just going to get worse for you. Some people don't like Lulu into Thresh, but JDG is a team that can definitely... I think if there's a team that is good at, you know, setting up kills on bottom side, I think it's JDG. It's like every single game, like clockwork, they find ways to break the enemy bot. And the moment Ruler has an advantage, it's all in their hands. And they are very, very good. Especially with Aphelios Thresh, right? Even in this game that was very chaotic, they managed to find a very, very nice dive timer bot. Insanely nice. So Lissandra gets picked as the answer into Ahri. I think every time I see Ahri into Lissandra, I see that Ahri is doing quite well, because in isolated 1v1, I think Lissandra is not as strong. And I think this champion is very jungle reliant. I think Lissandra gets a lot more value in cases where she's playing against Vi and Ahri. But then again, the enemy then has Vi and Ahri, which is, yeah, not super easy. So, Wukong K'Sante gets banned here on 4-5. Gwen Viego. And then Bilibili do the curveball by picking Sion on 4. This already, right? We see this pattern that Jinx and Sion is on the same team, which already signals this idea that the enemy wants to do the Sion strat. Why? It's because Jinx can push most AD carries, especially Aphelios level 1, because Aphelios doesn't have a spell and he has pretty weak guns. Sion gets picked together with Jinx, and they're committing all the way to this strategy. Ornn is matched into Sion, and then Kha'Zix gets locked in, because I'm assuming JDG are expecting either Nidalee or Kindred to be picked on 5. In solo queue, people like to play Nidalee into Kha'Zix, but I think if Kha'Zix is playing a little bit more of a calm game and more contested game, when, you know, it's not like Lissandra wins against Ahri in isolation, Aphelios against Thresh, will contest against Lulu Jinx, I don't think this matchup is as lopsided. Nidalee needs to constantly put her stilettos into the throat of the Kazakhs and make sure that he can't breathe in the jungle. But if Kazakhs gets farm, he gets a Dirk, he gets a potential Eclipse, I think that Kazakhs does just fine. He definitely scales well into this matchup. Nidalee needs to pressure him hard. Now looking at the details of this game, I was talking a lot about how you can manage the Sion strat, right? And I said that you can just do golems as the Kazakhs or the jungler that is getting invaded on. The key thing though is that this is a strategy that only kind of works once. So they know that this is happening, and Kazakhs and Thresh and Aphelios, you know, Kazakhs is just doing golems. And he just does golems. Maybe in a circumstance where Bilibili, you know, adjusts the strat the next time is that they will just ward golems, and then maybe Sion's gonna fuck him up and push him out. That is definitely something that can happen as an adaptation. But you have very limited wards, and this is a good play that can work once. Maybe Aphelios and Thresh can maybe help him and defend, because if they secure these golems, they can also secure the dive. Because what happens is Shun doesn't get level 3. When he's not level 3 and Kazakhs is already under the turret, the odds of the dive working is already slimmed down heavily. So we've seen two variants. We saw a variant with Gwen chunking the shit out of the bot laner. I think that maybe they could have contested bot harder in that case, Genji versus T1. And now we see this answer too, where the golems are just being done straight up, which I kind of like. I like this. And Kanavi now gets level 3. You don't need to complete the full camp to get level 3. We will see exactly how much Kanavi needs. And now he's just trying to kill small ones to get level to the XP. Basically, his pet also killed. Did his pet just kill? His pet just killed another one for free there. Why don't send bot lane top against this tactic? The issue is that the bot lane turret doesn't have the defense against platings. Basically, the bot lane turret is the only turret where the plates are weaker. In mid lane and top lane, the plates are very, very strong before minute 5. And they've added this to the game a long time ago to prevent teams from actually lane swapping. So if you do this and you send your team into top side, sure, you can maybe find, you know, your jungle will be even, your top lane might be in good conditions because maybe he's in bot and you're going to have the surprise factor. But when the waves crash and people begin to hit the platings, you'll really begin to feel the pain of it. And of course, it depends on champions. Like if Jhin is hitting your turret, then it's not that great. But there are some champions that are better at hitting and so forth. Okay? We continue. So Kanavi is now level 2. And Bilibili is kind of like, whoa, what the fuck just happened to us? And now Elk and On, they're trying to crash this wave. And Ruler and Missing managed to thin it out pretty well. And now Kha'Zix is of course basing. And so what is the conclusion here? Sion is now behind. And I think it isn't super meaningful that On is ahead, but at least he's going to have a very clean and easy lane phase with opportunities to transfer his pressure into the other side of the map, which is super positive when you're Ornn. Kha'Zix is behind, Ornn is ahead, and his bot lane didn't get dove, which is a great trade. Because the contrary would have been a lot worse. Their bot lane gets dove, and then Ornn is ahead. You know, this is a good solution to this Sion strat, in my opinion. And then, of course, there's other top laners that are going to punish Sion harder for this than Ornn. But Ornn having like a very easy and smooth lane phase is definitely like a plus. It's definitely a plus. But now Kha'Zix needs to find ways to recover. So he bases, goes into his top side, and then he tries to find just a couple of campies because Nidalee is now going to enjoy her advantage as she clears the jungle. Very difficult for Kha'Zix to make the decision to invade the Nidalee here. So Nidalee is just leveraging the fact that Kha'Zix has to be complete psychopath and ghosting in order to invade here, because if he face checks Nidalee, he's just going to lose. So Nidalee is just clearing away and enjoying her camps. Now this is the moment that is so crucial, because I believe this is just complete. I'm trying to think now, like what is the information JDG have? Is the fact that you know, Knight has prio, Kha'Zix is into bot, and now they are throwing everything they have to dive Elk. So they use the plant, and through that plant they spot the fact that Elk is alone. So Lulu's in base, and Nidalee clears her full top side. So this window here to dive is, whoa, it's fantastic. This window to dive is fantastic. Elk fucks up, of course, by using flash, because this flash doesn't lead to anything, and JDG could definitely have created a scenario where they don't die if someone else starts to tank, because Kha'Zix started to tank. But the fact that they found this dive, tells a story of JDG's level of precision here, because the plant, Lulu not there, Lulu base timer, tries to cheat a little base, buy a ruby, Nidalee opening on the map with the Lulu and so forth. Doesn't Ka live if Jinx doesn't flash? And I don't think it was necessary. I think if Kha'Zix doesn't tank, all is fine, and Jinx has no play. I think that he just, you know, he has to exit through the way the Jinx flashed anyway, so he's not going to exit on the other side, because if he exits on the other side to flash away from the Jinx, then Nidalee and Lulu will just kill him, right? That's why it's important. The follow-up from this, Elk not having flash, is just additional leverage, missing eventually. His jungler is going to swing by and is going to lantern with flash, and Elk having no flash gets punished. This is a very common rule with Thresh against a champion that doesn't have flash, is that you can flash, lantern, flay into GG. Very common, and this is something that JDG do so well. They find very, very good ways of creating advantage for, of course, Ruler. This game was rather smooth sailing. There's something in the water when it comes to Ruler, because the damage numbers he was pumping out with Aphelios with no items was just insanity. Was complete insanity. The level of mechanical skill that JDG and also Bilibili showed is crazy. Is truly a thing of beauty. A thing of beauty. We can take a look at this fight. Ornn is now pushing out Sion, and Sion is trying to find an angle, and Bilibili are now trying to cross through this point. And you see that JDG are now playing in an arc, right? They know that they have vision in these spots, and they're aware of Bilibili's position, so JDG are just kiting back and inviting them into a very, very poor position. And then when the turnaround finally occurs, the charm lands, and Ruler has a good time. Ruler has a good time. JDG's awareness of one another is beautiful. Is so beautiful. It really looks like it's very often like one person playing 5 champions, you know? It's like some StarCraft legend that is just microing his army. Very, very in unison. I liked it a lot. Thoughts on Bin Sion? Yeah, it wasn't the greatest, right? But they picked it for the strat, right? With the Jinx. They tried to get their bot lane ahead. And that is all she wrote for this game. We can move on to the second game. The second game was an absolute banger. Absolute banger, because the draft is, you know, it's very clear. Here, JDG on red side, Annie, Rakan, and Cannon. They then give the opposition the Ahri, Vi, Aphelios combo. I'm surprised JDG this entire tournament have had 0 prio on Vi. I'm very curious to find out why. I'm very, very curious, because they could have easily taken Vi and then made this game a lot more comfortable for, of course, Jinx. Or at least create a scenario where they pick K'Sante together with Jinx, and then maybe they can just pick Tahm Kench on 3 and prepare that with some bans. Right? But it didn't happen. It didn't happen. Which now was converted into the sweatiest game JDG had to play of their life. Because the enemy has all of the tools to kill Jinx, and you have a composition that is completely revolving around Jinx and her success. Because you just have these 4 potatoes and Jinx. 4 potatoes. Bilibili, after that initial game, they removed Sion and Gragas, and they said, yo, let's invite a game without tanks top, because Bin, it's like 369, that's his game. We know your game. We're gonna make sure that we have a Bin game going on. Okay? So that's why they switched up these bans. So Bin was like, fuck tanks. I need to spice it up. Okay? So JDG in the 4-5, they ban Gwen. And then they ban Blitzcrank. They ban Gwen because they want to be fully ready and capable of putting K'Sante top if necessary. If 5 pick has value for mid, so they want to be able to send K'Sante top. And also, they want to pick either Braum on Tam on 4, and I believe Gwen is good into both. So, we continue. K'Sante on 3. I think K'Sante here. K'Sante Jinx would have been better, and then save 3rd spot to maybe either secure Jinx or maybe pick Nidalee or Maokai there would have been better because the enemy is not picking it, or pick Vi. Right? But JDG, as I can show you here, so JDG didn't pick Vi a single time. Here Vi was ignored. Vi went into 4-5 here for Golden Guardians. Very surprising. Vi was completely ignored here too. Right? Here, Rengar Gali was picked into Zayarakan and Gragas. And no Vi. He prioritized Kha'Zix. I don't know if this is something that they are hiding, or they actively believe that Vi is not something that is so strong for them. Maybe they need something that can be a little bit more active early. Do you think it's strange that Kanavi hasn't played Nidalee yet? Not so much. Like, keep in mind, JDG has only played 3 games so far. I mean, 6 games so far. So it's not a lot of games. Kanavi definitely can play Nidalee, but I think that they are just very, very indexed on this idea that it's a full bot lane centric meta. So he just commits to that idea. If Nidalee is picked, maybe they believe the game becomes too much about Nidalee. And maybe Nidalee needs to farm, when maybe Nidalee should be bot. And then there are better junglers for that. Because every game, Ruler is the CEO. And he has a secret service around him. Highly trained protectors. So K'Sante gets picked and then Braum on 4. And then Alistar gets locked in and then Fiora. So people were like, oh, why Alistar? I think Alistar, Philios, they'll just bounce waves back and forth against Jinx, Braum, have some opportunities. But Alistar just picked here to just give your team more tools. This is more of a scaling pick, less so about a laning pick. Like, sure, maybe they could be like Soraka here, but they just want to have like a champion that will not get resetted so easy for Jinx, and just more ways of collapsing her, because they're like, yo, if we kill Jinx here, we're gonna win. Fiora gets picked. This is Fiora into K'Sante, but partially blind because K'Sante can go mid too, so Renekton is then picked into Fiora as an answer. Renekton, you know, we talked about this matchup a lot with Gaethan, and he believes that you should play Conqueror and look for all-ins and look to, you know, fight against the Renekton, because if Renekton can then rotate his abilities, Fiora is going to slowly lose. Yeah, we move on to the game. The whole game for JDG is a game of survival. Can Jinx survive? Can Jinx survive a Vi, Ahri, Fiora, Alistar with a cherry that is called Aphelios on top? Can the JDG homies protect them from all of the dangers? The idea for Bilibili, right? Through the early game, they managed to, you know, get good Drake spawns. The first 2 ones, and then Infernal is, of course, showing up too. Just ban this dude real quick. I don't know why people feel so inclined to send these penises in chat. Nevertheless, this is a moment in the fight where a good flank happens. There's a ward in the middle of the lane, and this is something that Bilibili needed to always look for. They need to find flanks, because if JDG could play front to back and they could use, you know, literally these homies are using shields. They can only protect one way, right? It's like these guys can only protect one way. Maokai spells only go one way. They need to always protect their flanks. Here, Missing could have held his E a little bit longer and could have looked to defend a little bit better, but JDG's flank was caught. And now you see that as long as Bin had contact and he's buying full armor, right? He's going towards Randuin's, going against GA, and has Ninja Tabi as well. He chunks Ruler, and Ruler cannot enter the fight. As long as Vi doesn't burn her ultimate, Ruler cannot enter the fight. It's very hard. Braum E is down, abilities of course, Knight is down too. They use them to, of course, defend. And Bilibili can play a safe game, slow game, where they just hold Vi ultimate. As long as they hold Vi ultimate, Ruler will not be able to push her. And the thing is, these 4 champions, the reason they are so weak in this context is because Bilibili will be able to beat them without burning their abilities. And this is so important. We let it play out. Vi ult is finally used. It's used at the point where the fight is already over, which is of course fine. Renekton dies, K'Sante dies, and Ruler could not interact in this fight. And this is going to be the story and the idea of the rest of the game. We fast forward a little bit. We know that JDG now are going to play a defensive game. You could argue that Knight should have went for a support item so he could generate a little bit more gold, because now they're just funneling all the CS into Ruler, of course. Let him have everything. He's the CEO. He needs items. He needs stopwatch. He needs find value from that stopwatch. And things are going to be good. They got the Nash, of course, after the fight. This is something that we can show too. Elk making a massive blunder. And it's kind of sad because people are completely devaluing who Elk is because of this mistake. It's like Elk is a very, very, risk-filled player. Sorry, this is not the one. I think he did it in the previous game where he played Thresh. This just happens to be under the same turret. My point was that people are undervaluing Elk because he performed worse than, of course, Ruler. But I think that Elk will be very dangerous against G2. I'm not talking about the warding item. I'm talking about the support item that you take CS with, right? There's eventually here a siege in bottom, and I think this is something to pay attention to for G2. I feel like that as the game progresses, I feel like the clock strikes 12, and Jun and On begin to make very uncharacteristic mistakes because they don't have the discipline to wait the game out. I think this is something that maybe G2 can leverage when they're playing defensively. It's very hard to break this turret because it's so easy to rotate from mid into this turret. But Bilibili, they are just continuing to apply pressure because they want to clear the jungle camps and then prepare for Drake because there's no Nasher. Fiora is trying to win on side, but 369 is just clearing the waves, taking some HP damage, and it's not super easy for Fiora to chip away at the turrets. I made the analogy on stream the last time that it's very similar to a, I don't know if you guys have seen the Count of Monte Cristo, where they kind of, dig through the prison with like a spoon or something, and it takes them 7 years. It's very similar when Fiora's chipping away at the turret. It isn't really a very good way of converting the victory, but Fiora is definitely a champion that at this point is going to, actually be very good in the fight against this composition if she finds a flank and she can have contact with Jinx, because it's not super easy to peel a Fiora because of her W and her ability to dash, and also her itemization. This is finally the moment where Jun has enough and he decides to ult, and you can see how this choke point that is formed. It's very easy for these three to push out Fiora and to hit, and these guys can't fight at all. So this is a very strange decision here by Jun. He's fighting here, Kanavi is very tanky, he mark a ult so the enemy can't re-enter, and there's no realistic way for Yagao and Elk and Bin to fight here. It's a very strange mistake by Jun. He gets pushed out, and now because he has no Vi ultimate, JDG feel very loose and free to look to Porsche for a fight, because the Vi ultimate is the ultimate tool to break the Jinx. And as long as JDG have the position on the opponent, they know exactly where everyone is, they can't get flanked, and there's no Vi ultimate, JDG is feeling loose and free. So that's why they tried to push here for a fight. But Bilibili took the Drake and peaced out. The next situation that occurs you know, if we look from Bilibili's perspective, what is the setup they want to create? They want to basically push mid, they want to put vision in this arc, right? Just do a rift kit real quick. Rift kit. They want to control this area. Right? They want to control this area because if the enemy crosses here, they want to be able to attack them from different angles. So this area is very important. It is a little bit harder because Infernal Map gives you easy access to this point, right? Infernal Map gives you options. So Infernal Map is definitely like a kind of a silly role in this scenario. But Bilibili want to create a scenario where basically as the enemy tries to enter into the Nash pit from this area, they want to be able to attack from these angles, right? To create a crossfire onto this point. But instead what we have is a gorgeous punish here from JDG. I think that ideally they find ways to flank with the Fiora, and then basically as long as Fiora is flanking, as long as she can hit the target that gets Vi-ulted, which should be of course Jinx, then all should be good. Because I thought here at this point Ruler was getting kind of greedy because he didn't buy a stopwatch. I think that the rapid fire cannon is a good buy here because you want to be able to hit from a safe distance and keep your lethal tempo stacks and play with Ghost, right? You're gonna get value from rapid fire. It's like rapid fire is a very defensive item. Other items can maybe give you more damage, but they're inherently more greedy. So rapid fire cannon is a defensive item to compensate for the potential threats that are going in your direction. This is the key moment. In reality here, after Bilibili cleared this mid wave, what I think should have happened is that they should have postured and be ready for Nash. They should have postured and be ready for Nash because currently they are very strong. Homies in the chat, you guys are 800 here. I want you to be smarter about this. Don't be results driven. Just because certain things played out a certain way, don't say that red side just won because they have better late game peel or whatever. There's a lot of nuance to this situation. If there's a situation here with Bilibili where they are posturing on Nash and they play in this pocket, things would be better. So basically, you want to create a situation where Elk, ideally, you know, it's like you want to create a situation where if the enemy feels forced to cross through this point, that's the situation you want to create. Very important. And then Fiora can potentially look to find the TP flank, and then as the enemy crosses into here, this is where you strike. But what happens is that Elk is posturing forward when Yagao is hitting a ward. So JDG 100% are going to pull the trigger, because they know Yagao is not connected here. Even in a situation where Ruler gets Vi-ulted here, it's very easy to defend, because the Fiora is not ready to flank, and also the Ahri is not ready to follow up. So they utilize this moment. And this is such a crucial moment, right? Because Elk is walking forward to auto-Q. And they're punishing the fact that Yagao is on the ward and Bilibili are posturing forward. This is not Yagao's fault. I think this is more Bilibili's fault, these three. And here On loses ult, loses flash, and Elk also loses flash. And this is a very big problem. And as we see this continuation, JDG want to leverage this moment to pressure. They're like, yo, we need to fucking start Nash. Right now, Alice has no ult, no flash. Aphelios has no flash. So very good punish. They saw Yagao on Nash, they went. And now the key thing as well is that they are aware of everyone's position. Fiora is now trying to undermine, and ideally what this Fiora wants to do is still find a flank situation. But they spot her first time. Now they see Bin, which is great information. Everyone's funneled through the same side and JDG can just play front to back. Alright? Here, Bin, I believe that he has enough time to circle around. I think Bin makes a crucial mistake here by going into the Nash pit, because ideally I think that Bilibili need to walk around. Like here, if Bin plays a fight, walks around, and then they combine Vi ultimate with the ultimate of Elk and they push forward, I think good things can happen. But instead, Ruler, right now in this position, he knows that he has all of the space in the world to kite backwards. He can just kite backwards. What happens here is that Shun uses R. Missing now blocks RE damage. But Fiora needs to be involved in this pocket. Needs to be involved. Very important. And the same from before. These two don't have flash. And this is where Bilibili just pulled the trigger way too soon. Because in a different scenario, where Fiora queues into the pit here, and these two are posturing like that to defend, in a world where Shun doesn't ult and Yagao doesn't ult, they are still applying pressure to these two. And then maybe El could do some work on this group of people. But the fact that Bin goes into the pit, these two are not connected to the play here, Ruler can now survive the ultimate. Kanavi flashes on the Ahri to help. They block with missing. She is now surviving the ult, and now the fight is very losing. Additionally for Elk, right? Looking at Elk's decision here, like here he just gets he gets W'd by K'Sante, right? Because he is tunnel visioning to follow up on the Jinx, and he gets Q3'd, and then he gets one-shot by Renekton. This is also very, very bad. But there is room here for Bilibili to play better. But JDG punished the mistake so fucking beautifully, so it looks so fucking easy what they are doing. It looks so easy. Sometimes the ults that are unused are the deadliest. Here as well, not sure what they are looking for here. It's like Ahri showed on bot, crossed a pink ward, and is now on bot wave, and On is just pushing forward. This is just kind of sad, right? Very, very sad. He dies, of course. Maybe best team fighting team. Yeah. JDG plays so beautiful. So beautiful. Very, very beautiful. It's like the CS numbers are cool and all for Ruler, but my man is just taking camps on every midwave, you know? Because JDG as a whole, they say, yo, Ruler, you're the GOAT, okay? Ruler, you're the GOAT. You take all the CS, you're gonna carry the game, and we already have our items. So it's just a team decision, right? There's no fucking ego or bullshit. They just know, Ruler, take all the fun. Now it's the same thing, right? Everything needs to happen through a flank. Things are getting harder now because GA is finished, and as long as JDG know that there's no wards behind them, there's no flank possible. Bin is showing, so now Ruler's chilling. Ruler's chilling. He's going to just bonk with his rapid fire hit, and he's posturing in a way where, you know, as long as he doesn't get one shot, all is good. He's just bonking, hitting with rapid fire hit, and now Viult is used. Just look at the decision. Like you can see here, the moment Viult is used. Here Viult is used, Ruler goes sicko mode. Look at the look at the change up in how he plays the moment Viult is used. Look at this. Now he's pushing forward. He's bonking. He's bonking. He's bonking. He doesn't give a shit anymore. No one can pressure him. He pushed out 3, yeah? And Kanavi abuses Maokai passive to the max. Great play. You know? Viult is used. Boom. He goes. He flies. JDG is a very fucking impressive unit when it comes to how they fight. And there is clear belief in one another. It's like Ruler plays in a way where he plays to his absolute limit, but he also plays to the absolute limit of his teammates too, because he knows he can rely on them. And that trust goes both ways. His teammates also rely on him, so they are very willing to throw everything on the line to defend him. And that is the beauty of JDG. Very good. Now, going into the final game. Bilibili vs JDG Game 3. Bilibili ban Ahri, Sion, Jinx, and first pick Aphelios. Try to change things up. Because JDG, Lulu Zeri. It's like... Ruler has champions. Champions in the pocket on end. no problem. He goes Lulu Zeri. Not something that we've seen in the tournament so far, but Lulu Zeri is still there. So Jinx is out, they go Lulu Zeri. The enemy responds with Nidalee Nautilus, and then K'Sante gets picked. I think probably K'Sante, you know, I think Bilibili needed to up their pry on this champion a little bit, because K'Sante just kind of looks like a cheat code right now. Which is funny, because K'Sante needed to be nerfed 5 times before I realized how OP this champion is. Nevertheless, K'Sante, like being able to pick K'Sante and flex it on red, it looks insanely OP. And especially if you're showing Nautilus. It's like, Nautilus flex is not really real against K'Sante flex. We continue. Blitzcrank Leona gets banned to support the Lulu. Because they don't know where Nautilus is going to go. And then Maokai Gragas is banned. So it's like, Shun Nidalee is a famous one. I know that it's a big meme to hate on Nidalee. I've hated on Nidalee too, right? And I have my reasons for it. But you know, it's like executing Nidalee is very hard, but it does give you a lot of opportunities in the game to snowball. And if you're on the back foot, putting that in the game can be helpful, right? Having a more early game oriented composition can be helpful against a team that is dominating you later on in the game, right? So Sejuani gets picked on 4. With Gragas out, Sejuani just want a beefy boy because they have Lulu and they just pick Seju. Jax gets picked into K'Sante blind. You know, Bin is just throwing down the gauntlet. You know, he wants to have a good time. He wants to pick Jax. They're on like losing, you know, they're back on match point. And then Trash gets picked and Yagao is showing his Nautilus. So, Syndra gets picked. And this was one of the most beautiful Syndra games that I've seen in a long time. The last time I saw a very beautiful Syndra game of this caliber was probably like Showmaker at Worlds 2021. That was a beautiful Syndra game. I remember also Knight in Playoffs 2021. Beautiful Syndra game. He showed me mechanics that I didn't even know existed. Where you can extend the range of your E-stun by simply queuing and Eing through a wall. It was beautiful. But we continue. Looking at the draft once again, blue side is incentivized to snowball early. And then maybe when Jax begins to reach 3 core, they will have more opportunities later on in the game. Because Jax is a champion that scales super well. When he's level 16, has, you know, 3 items, good ability haste, he can become super dangerous too. Right? So this is a game that can go back and forth, but definitely champions like Thresh and Nautilus and Nidalee lose value as you go, and they are heavily reliant on how good Aphelios and Jax is in the game. Let's take a look. In terms of JDG and their situational awareness, very impressive. But I want you guys to pay attention to how Yagao plays this, because Yagao doesn't seem to have awareness of where his teammates are at all. Here, I think the initial ult is good because it does knock up Kanavi too, and the auto into the Kanavi to follow up with the hook is very good, right? Because Kanavi over postures. I think Kanavi needs to wait and play in this pocket a little bit longer, right? And in reality, right, whoever engages first should be relatively losing, in my opinion, if Kanavi plays this appropriately. But Kanavi makes a mistake here, Yagao makes a similar mistake. Because in my honest opinion, I think that JDG had the better position for the Drake. And that would mean that Bilibili would then have the better position for mid. The Drake is already taken, the Drake is already gone, and I think Bilibili can posture in a way to make it very hard for JDG to re-enter, and they can push, and they can make sure the top is pushed, and then base and have a tempo advantage, and then play towards the bottom tier 1, as an example. Right? But instead we have a fight going, and I think the moment here they kill Sejuani, Yagao needs to kite back. Why is Yagao jiggling here in the water? He needs to kite back. It's very important as a tank to recognize you should only take damage when your enemy can give damage back, or you have abilities that can actually pressure the opposition. But Ruler decides to ult and hit because Nautilus has no spells and Thresh has no spells. So Bilibili is very incentivized now to kite back. Very important. Right now, Bin is marking the 369, he's already low HP, and they should be kiting back. But what does Yagao do instead? He's just kind of doing nothing, right? Ideally, the Lantern comes sooner and they kite back sooner, and then they wait for Nautilus spells to then turn around. But Ruler punishes the fact that the opposition used all of their spells to kill Seju and they didn't disengage. Very important that you will only reap the rewards of the death of Sejuani when the cooldown of your spells come back. Because I mentioned at the beginning of the stream that the purest sword in the game is laning. Because there you can clearly see, oh, the enemy used his spell on the wave. I'm stronger than him because he has a cooldown. He currently has no spell, so I'm stronger because I have a spell. In this situation, Sejuani's death, if you trade it for Nautilus not having a spell, Thresh not having a spell, and you consider that 10-second window as an all-in opportunity, then the team, then I would always, if I could in theory trade, I say, Sejuani can't fight in this situation, but Nautilus has no Q and Thresh has no Q. I would make that trade almost always. Because Nautilus without Q and Thresh without Q, they are pretty much as good as dead. But if those cooldowns come back off cooldown, then obviously, you know, then they have value again. So initially here, right, the idea should always, maybe Ruler can still kite and fight back. But the idea should be here that whole Billy just kites back, no matter what. And then when the cooldowns are on, the spells of the cooldowns are back, they swing and they hit hard. Very important. They need to kite back no matter what. Lantern, run. We killed the guy, but we are not useless. You are not useful right now. And Ruler, same as the previous game, Vi ulted, he just unleashes. Because there's no threat on him anymore. He unleashes, he goes. And here Yagao, like this little jiggle and the fact that Lantern isn't thrown, you know, these are difference makers. Because now Ruler has ult on, they kill Yagao and his Q is on when it's too late. Beautiful stun here from Syndra to zone the enemy off as Ruler is pushing forward. Beautiful play. Alright? Very important. Maybe in a situation here where Bin doesn't hate the 369. Maybe he could have fought with his team and it would have been made the difference. I'm not sure what Bin was doing this entire sequence, but my point still stands, so we can definitely like learn from it. Yeah, Bin definitely played like he hates 369 this whole series. We look at the next educational moment. This is a good example of JDG basically, you know, kiting back, right? They kill on, and now they have no spells. They're kiting back because they want to buy time. Even though they killed one person and they are 4v5, they understand the circumstance of the fight. They've used a lot of their juice. So they're kiting back to get a superior position, inviting the enemy into a weaker position and inviting the Syndra to win the fight for them. A lot of cases here, teams are gonna say, yo, we killed Thresh, we can win now. But they use a lot of their tools, a lot of their spells in order to make that happen. So Billy are looking for the punish, because right now, even though their Thresh is dead, it's a worthy sacrifice if the enemy had burned a lot of spells to kill him and they have an opportunity to fight. But look, JDG, they're kiting back. They're kiting back, and meanwhile they're throwing spells at the opposition. Ruler is keeping lethal tempo stacked, and now they find the big turn because now abilities are back off cooldown and they're going again. Syndra also connected, they turn and they swing hard. And now it's the opposite, right? Ruler finally ults. Very good. Let's take a look at the next example. Yeah, JDG, I don't know. You know, here they're starting Nash because they see Aphelios and Thresh on the mid wave. Right? So I understand exactly why they're looking for this. They're way stronger, and Aphelios and Thresh is on the mid wave. But here with the TP and Bin having a nice flank and also the planty, Yagao is just entering the pit. It's very unfortunate, right? Zun steals the Nash. But I wanted to highlight this, that even though Bilibili lost 3-0 against JDG, bro, they have some fucking insanely good players, by the way. Like, insanely good players. It's like JDG showed such high level of class. I understand why JDG felt the need to, or felt like they could do this Nash and they wanted to end the game quick. It came at a lot of risk. I think that, sure, they could have secured, they could have played. It's like, the hard part is the fact that the tier 1 top is alive, right? They should just play for top, to crash top, play for tier 1, and then they can actually push the enemy deeper. Because the fact that the tier 1 is alive allows the enemy to go through top side, place pings like these, and find flanks, right? So aesthetically, I understand what JDG did it, but it came at risk that is not necessary, right? But I just wanted to highlight this because Bilibili, like, the angle that been found here is fucking gorgeous. The Nautilus ult finds a lot of value. He swings his helicopter, and the steal comes in here from Jun. Obviously, JDG, I don't know, they had a dinner reservation or something when they... but the Bilibili was so good, how did they lose 3-0? It's not that they were so good. It's like, they were definitely worse than JDG, but they fought back. They fought back. I just don't think that you can look at this series and just say that Bilibili is like complete trash. You get me? Or like people are categorizing Elk as a bad player because he had a rough series. I think Elk tomorrow against G2 is going to be a very dangerous player. It's the same, if you put the contrast of Elk versus C9, right? Berserker is a fantastic player, but he made Berserker look very bad. And it's very important that I say look very bad. Because Berserker still played well. But Elk played insanely well in the C9 series. You know? So we continue. Oh, this was the moment that I was talking about before. If it's unrelated to the game, keep it till later. This was the moment I was talking about with Elk. I understand why people give him shit for shit like this, because he's completely running it down. Right? He definitely ran it down here. He got caught twice and then walked up again like he had 3 lanterns on speed dial or something. Sure. Even the kid in the crowd is surprised. I get it. But I don't think moments like this should categorize a player. Finally, this masterpiece. Just JDG and the situational awareness, man, is just so beautiful. Like, Ruler just pushes forward the moment you burn your spells wrong or someone gets their abilities blown for some reason. He just pushes, unleashes. Super beautiful. Trying to find that gorgeous sequence. Oh yeah, this is the one. Jesus. This looks like like the StarCraft 1 Brood War World Champion is micromanaging all of the champions, and he's like they're all in the one-track mind, you know? Like, here it's very important that Bilibili just disengage because Ruler used ult, right? The dodge here from On is very important. Ruler ult. Ran out here finally. The kiting. Just pay attention to Knight, how he finds the CC always on Bin when he tries to push her forward. It's so important. So every time Bin was trying to EQ forward, he was just getting denied. And I think that this whole series, Bin just needed to take some time to get a better position. I think that he always rushed when it wasn't necessary. He was often the strongest member of his team, and I think that if he took the time to get a better position, I think he would have been a lot more impactful. Because a lot of these situations where JDG is winning, they create circumstances where they have full information on the opposition, and they create circumstances where the fights are purely front to back. And the way League of Legends work is a lot of spells, they are one directional, right? Most abilities, you fire them, they're either in a cone, they're forward. If I'm Syndra and I'm getting attacked from here and from here, I can't really choose well where I'm gonna EQ. And if Jax gets EQ'd in isolation, then everyone else gets a lot more space. But if you're fighting front to back, it's a lot easier to kite backwards when your spells are on cooldown. And that comes back to the initial point of Yagao, right? He could have kited backwards, but he didn't. Right? They should have lanterned out. And when you have everything front to back, it's a lot easier to kite backwards. But if the enemy crosses a certain point, let's say Ben played in this pocket and denied this pink, it would have been a little bit better. Right? As an example. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful from JDG. Very good cohesion, beautiful usage of spells. Like Knight on Syndra is just an absolute menace. Ruler was legit 1v9? Not really. Ruler is playing God mode League of Legends. But he can play God mode League of Legends because his teammates are sick. Bin was legit 1v9. I think Bin was very strong in the games, but I think he could have done more. And the crazy thing is, he needed to do more because of how good JDG is. This sequence is just crazy. It's like, sure, it's like they are psychopaths for trying to end here and all getting Nautilus ulted, and you can say whatever you want about that, that's fine. Nothing to review there. We all know they overreached and they griefed. That's okay. But just that, look at Knight as he exits, you know, he just fucking smokes two people on the exit and he saves the play. Like, it's craziness, man. Craziness. So to summarize this series, right? It's like, what makes JDG so damn dangerous? I think their ability to snowball bot, their individual mechanical prowess on each role is like crazy good. I don't think 369 should be underrated because in terms of playing the tanks and how he positions in fights, better than anyone, by far. Knight, amazing. Simply amazing. Knight Ari, Knight Syndra, amazing. Kanavi, in terms of how he finds ways to break bot, amazing. And on top of that, you have an AD carry that is nearly flawless. If JDG offer you a position of head coach, would you take it? And how would you improve the team? I don't know how much I could improve the team. Like, that would be a crazy proposition. Because I would take the job to learn. I would take the job to learn. What about Missing? Missing is insanely good too. He's insanely good too. He's the most disciplined player in the support role. And this might sound weird, but the ability to do nothing and wait is the most crucial for support at the highest level. This Lulu is always 2 steps behind Ruler. If you look at Mickey playing Lulu, he feels the urge to auto-attack the opposition and looks to Q and looks to fuck it because he gets fucking bored. He gets bored. Like, for example, that game with G2 versus Mad Lions. Like, they get caught on top because Mickey wants to basic attack enemy K'Sante. And then to add, Missing is fantastic on Thresh and so forth. It's not an EU thing. On a lot of supports are like this. It's like the highest level supports are so used to being weak. So they're trying to squeeze everything they can from their champ. But sometimes what you're squeezing is like one drop of water, like no one's gonna fucking quench their thirst off of that. Right? And that's it for this series. If I look at Bilibili, right? Because we're going to talk about Bilibili versus G2. It's like, I think Bin is insanely sharp. In terms of isolated 1v1 and getting individual advantages, he's insanely good. I think against a team like JDG, he couldn't exude his pressure the same way because JDG was insanely aware of him and he needed to really like find better flanks. I think that Elk is a player that does extremely well against players that are worse than him. And there is not a lot of players that are better than him. It's like if I put Elk up against Gumayushi Korea or Ruler Missing, I think Elk is going to struggle. Because when Elk is doing well, it is when he has the confidence to overposture and invite mechanical situations. But if he gets beaten in those mechanical situations, he looks a lot worse. And it's like Bilibili, they're playing catch-up, right? Bilibili is playing catch-up. When it comes to Bilibili facing up against JDG or T1, they're playing catch-up on this whole identity of playing full into bot side. Right? And I think that Bilibili against G2 won't get tested in that gameplay as harshly. And I think that Bin will have a lot more free reign. Because when I think of BB right now, right? When I think of BB has played a fantastic tournament. Really good tournament. He had a decent Yasuo game. Psychopath for picking Yasuo. Yasuo into Gnar. Craziness. He played Cassio into Aurelia. He played Cassio into K'Sante. Pretty easy. Right? Pretty easy matchup. I would want to play a Cassio against into K'Sante. I wouldn't sweat at all. In this situation, he went Darius, right? And he got completely clapped, right? He got completely clapped in this game. He couldn't find lethal, burned sums, and then the wave got stacked on him, and he got dove because the Lissandra got solo killed, right? That's a fucking danger. In this particular game, I remember he played Cannon into a Tristana, and the Tristana had full prio, right? As an example. In this particular game, he played Cannon into Malphite. He had a good time, but he also, you know, was a little bit of a liability, right? It's like they dove Malphite this game, and BB was put at a disadvantage later on in the game because he burned his flash for no reason and he got punished for it. Right? They won this game. BB was very effective in the game, but he was still a liability in terms of the gold that the enemy could generate. And those inaccuracies, you can't do that against Bin. Especially in the context of who G2 are. G2, in my mind, isn't that team that is going to use their jungler to make sure that they can dive bot and crack bot and snowball their AD carry through the roof. That might sound crazy because their Draven gameplay is exactly that. But the point is, they don't have the same level of nuance that JDG does in terms of snowballing bot. And that's why I believe YamatoCannon is going to have a lot more breathing room against G2 than they did against JDG. Playing against JDG, their bot lane and their jungle, I say this so often. When you play against better opposition, the amount of energy you need to concentrate to do basic tasks as lane phase and protecting yourself from ganks and thinking about angles, your perspective closes. I don't know if you've experienced this in solo queue too. You play against someone that is shit at laning, you can begin to pay attention to all of the details in the game. When you play against someone that is good in laning, all of a sudden, you know, you recognize that you need to put a lot more effort into concentrating on something. And that is why, right, a lot of teams look a lot worse when they play against better opposition. They make basic mistakes. You make random mistakes. Why did they do this? It's because it's like time begins to close onto you and your perspective begins to close on you. So I want to highlight that, okay? My point is, I think that Bilibili is a favorite. I think that Bilibili is the favorite to win against G2. And I'm predicting Bilibili to beat G2. How does G2 win? Okay? How does G2 win? I think that Yagao has had a horrible tournament by his standard. Yagao, I look at him in the player cam, like he looks like he doesn't want to be there. He's having a really, really hard time. On the flip side, I don't think that Caps has had the best tournament ever, right? But these are the type of moments where you hope, yo, this is where Caps is going to basically rise to the occasion. That could be an angle for G2. I think that Caps is a lot more effective than Yagao, then things could be great, right? But I had the same belief when G2 went into the series against Mad Lions and he wasn't performing. He had some rough games against Gen G2, right? It's like right now, Caps is not in form. And I think that a lot of mid laners are struggling with their identity around mid because mid lane is in a very weird spot where it's not as impactful. And you have to really, really overperform on some champions in order to be really, really good. Think Chovy Ari or Knight Syndra. Chovy and Knight are heavy outliers in how effective they can be. If Caps manages to create a circumstance where he's the one with pressure and he can elevate Yike's performance to spread that to the rest of the game, I feel like G2 is mechanically and macro capable to beat Bilibili. But I think the real test will be the 2v2 against YamatoCannon and Bin, and then transitioning that to a mid game where they can actively beat Bilibili in teamfights. Because I think the scaling component is also extremely important. Bilibili, through their whole gauntlet run, when they made it all the way to the finals, they had some scrappy victories because they are damn fucking good at fighting. And this series against JDG was competitive, and JDG was better at fighting, but it was competitive because Bilibili are damn good at fighting. And I think that the biggest obstacle for G2 to overcome is I am not sure how G2 is going to approach top lane, right? It's like BB playing the Scions and the Gragases. I'm sure this is something that I can do, but is that something that they want to do? And is G2 a strong enough team to shape themselves into a spear that isolates enemy bot and breaks them apart? I think that Yike has had a decent performance. I think that as the game progresses, I feel like Shun and On definitely make a lot of blunders that are punishable, and I think that could be an opportunity too. But I'm really curious, what is the approach for BB? Because I can see a world where he plays Olaf, and then he invites a Jax, and then all of a sudden we have this heavy skill matchup where Bin is in his comfort zone, and then all of a sudden the game is blown up from the get-go. I would be very scared about those things. But then again, would I want G2 to pivot? Because Broken Blade has also had a fantastic tournament. He's played the Poppies. He's played the Casios. He's played the Cannons. He's had a great time. I'm not sure what the performance is there. I think if Caps, Yike and Mickey can connect, I think they are much better than their counterparts playing the 3v3 mid-jungle game. But the question is, can they create lane states that will allow them to do so? That will be the biggest challenge. Because I don't want to underestimate Elk and On's ability to lane. And Shun is mechanically talented. And Billy, you know, in their matchup against JDG, keep in mind, regional matchups always play out differently. Always play out differently. It's like Billy and JDG have played, this is the third best of 5 they play against each other this year. The same way G2 played the third best of 5 against Mad Lions. You know things about one another, you know things about yourself in that particular matchup. You become more rigid, you become more stiff about ideas, you know. Yes, best of 3s too, right? They know each other very well. I think Billy is super dangerous. And I think if G2 beat them, that's a fucking incredible feat. But I am leaning towards Billy victory. I think G2, they haven't had the sharpest year. And I think the main question for G2 is how much will they have learned? How much have they grown? I definitely think that it will be close. I could see the series go to 3-2. I can definitely see the series go to 3-2. I think it's going to be a close series, but I favor Billy. I have to say though, I'm very surprised that people in chat is talking about, like, how can your mind go in a direction where you're thinking about which players to replace in G2? That's a crazy conversation. They have fantastic players in each role. I wouldn't want to replace anyone on G2 currently. Why would you want to do that? They are a very, very strong team. And the difficulty of League of Legends is to find circumstances where every player is peaking in their performance. I don't think there is any upgrades that you can make right now currently for G2. So let's hold those conversations. Okay? I think there's too much 1+1 replacing players that people think. What if they could wonder? BB has played fantastic. He's played really, really well. And those who say replace Caps, really, I don't know why we're going that direction. That's just craziness. But that's okay. You guys are entitled to your own opinion. I just hope that I swayed some of you that are talking that nonsense. Okay. In regards to the Gen G C9 matchup and the T1 JDG matchup, we're going to take those on the days. So tomorrow we'll be breaking down the Billy G2 series. It's going to be exciting because one of these teams is going home. I believe, you know, we've had so much fun with MSI, but let me tell you this. The fun is about to really, really begin. Is that the real Don Jake? It was a fake Don Jake. I appreciate it. Thank you for the Prime Gaming. If it's the real Don Jake, shout out to Don Jake. Hi, it's me. Well, I don't know if I should believe you. It's hi, it's me. It's hi, it's me. I said, oh, okay. Now I believe you. Hi, it's me. Click my profile. All right. 2,000 followers. That has to be it. Hi, it's me. I just released Kazi interview. We almost kissed. That's just great. I'm gonna have a look. You don't mind that I watch them on stream, right? I always post it and tell people to like and all that jazz. You know? Let me just round off this video. Yo, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching all the way till the end. This was another long one, but I hope that I added some additional structure to it. I'll catch you guys on the flippity flop. That's how I end my videos. Catch you guys on the flippity flop. Can you predict T1 JDG? I want to marinate on it just a little bit more. I obviously predict Genji to beat C9, but T1 JDG I want to marinate a little bit more. I can tell you my gut is bubbling and telling me JDG. That is what my gut is telling me right now. But also, I drank coffee and pre-workout, so I want to sleep on it. I want to sleep on it.